According to tradition, this is the site where Jesus is speaking the Beatitudes, where he's giving this Sermon on the Mount. It's on this hillside, which is on the north side of the Sea of Galilee. It's now a convent up there on the Mount of Beatitudes. And even to this day, as you can see, it's a very rural area. There's no real towns. This little town right here, that's Capernaum. That's Jesus' headquarters when he was, that's where Peter lived, where Andrew, James, and John lived. There's some memorials there. But this area is still, like I said, even to this day, it's a rural area. It's far away from Jerusalem, Jericho, Tel Aviv, any political or economic hub. Now, on those hills across the lake you see there would have been traders going up and down. Those are the Golan Heights, going up and down on their way to Damascus. But that's still far away. On that day, thousands of years ago, Jesus is teaching on this side of the lake. And the people that are gathered on that hillside are fishermen from those villages, from Capernaum, from Tagba, from Magdalene. They're families there's olive groves just outside those towns where families would render olive oil at the presses to use for soap, for fuel, for medicine. Among those that are gathered hearing Jesus' words are shepherds who come up onto this hill every day and feed their sheep, tend to their flocks. And it's on this hill where all these people, these ordinary people, have come to take a break from the routine of their normal lives and listen to this amazing rabbi and the words that he has to speak. These are just average, everyday people, not all that different from you and me, doing their best to live good, decent, moral lives. Their mothers and fathers trying to raise their kids right, working hard to put food on the table every day, make their home a place of happiness and love. They're ordinary people of faith, faithful in their religious duties. They follow the Torah. They keep the Sabbath. They say their prayers, and they try to teach their children to do the same. These people don't have their names in history books. They're not kings or princes or generals or heroes or philosophers or writers. And it's to these people that Jesus says, Beatitude, supreme bless, utmost blessing to the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. One of our human failings is our lust for power, our need to be in charge or in control of someone else. Most of our written history records the rise and falls of empires, the conquest of one people over another. We have writings thousands of years old telling us who was king, who won a glorious battle. We have monuments inscribed in stone, embedded in the walls of the most ancient buildings in the world, around the world, telling us who was in charge and who was victorious. And here we have these days archaeologists spending their time digging, trying to find out how the ordinary people lived, how millions of people just did their best to get by in their daily living. We remember the power. We remember the influential. We have plenty of records of those who wield power and try to impose their will on someone else. Even in the Old Testament, starting with the prophet Joel, we have Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great, the Macedonian who conquered most of the Mediterranean area at about 300 BC, 300 years before Jesus was born. And he had this program of Hellenization. What Hellenization meant was that he just thought the Greek way of life was the best way of life. He wanted everybody to speak Greek. He wanted everybody to know Greek laws, Greek custom, Greek culture, Greek philosophy. And 3 centuries later, Paul is still having to deal with the Hellenizers, the people who want to impose Greek ways in Rome, in Corinth, and in Galatia. The world is full of people who would like you to live the way they want you to live. The world of the people listening to Jesus on that hillside is not all that different from ours. There have always been people who want to pursue economic, political, and social power to subjugate others. And there always will be people who lust for power. There will always be someone who is in power, and there will always be someone who doesn't have it and wants it and is willing to go to any cost to get it. In the past few years, we've seen in the political life of this country how vicious, how divisive, and how destructive the battle for power can be. And we're tempted to retaliate in kind. We're tempted to join in and support a particular group, a particular cause, a particular party in order for us to gain that same level of power and influence. And of course, the truth about joining a group or following a party or something like that is it's really the people who know how to control that party are the people that really wield the power. There's a joke, and it's when I was growing up, there's this firebrand, and he gets up on his soapbox. He says, "Come to the revolution, and there'll be 2 cars in every garage. Come to the revolution, and there'll be a chicken in every pot. Come to the revolution, and every man will have 2 blonde." And some guy in the back says, "Well, now, wait a minute. I ride a bicycle, I'm a vegetarian, and my wife's a brunette." And the firebrand goes, "Come to the revolution and do as you're told." It's the human nature, to want to wield power, to be strong, to be in charge. And yet the need is divisive and destructive. One of the things that I've noticed here around with the children's day school around us is I don't hear a lot of those old nursery rhymes. I don't hear Mother Goose or Brothers Grimm or Child Garden of Verses. It seems to be replaced with Barney or Disney or Sesame Street. And I was preparing this sermon, I kept thinking about these battles for power. And my mother had a poem that she would often refer to in the relationship between my brother and myself. It was called The Duel. It was written in 1892 by Eugene Field. The gingham dog and the calico cat, side by side on the table sat. 'Twas 12:30, and what do you think? Not one or t'other had slept a wink. The old Dutch clock and the Chinese plate appeared to know as soon as fate there was going to be a terrible spat. I wasn't there, I simply stayed. I was told to be by the Chinese plate. The gingham dog went bow, wow, wow. The calico cat replied, meow. The air was littered an hour or so with bits of gingham and calico, while the old Dutch clock in the chimney place, with its hands before its face, for it always dreaded a family row. Now mind you, I'm only telling you what the old Dutch clock declares is true. The Chinese plate looked very blue and wailed, oh dear, what shall we do? But the gingham dog and the calico cat wallowed this way and tumbled that, employing every tooth and claw to the awfulest way you ever saw. And oh, how the gingham and calico flew. Don't fancy I exaggerate, I got my news from the Chinese plate. Next morning, where the two had sat, they found no trace of dog or cat. And some folks think unto this day that burglars stole those pair away. But the truth about that cat and pup is this: they ate each other up. And what do you really think of that? The old Dutch clock told me so, and that's how I came to know. Like I said, my mother referred to that a lot about my brother and myself. Those who seek power, who constantly fight the battle of domination, either to grab at the power they don't have or defend the power that they do, become so embroiled that they never have time to simply enjoy God's creation. We have this urge within us to seek power over someone. And we're taught to indulge for that lust of power. We're told to fight for our rights. We're throw around the world empowerment, raise our fist and shout power to this group or that group. We're encouraged to fight to win, whatever the cost. We're taught not to be weak, because if we're weak, we're a victim. We'll be oppressed. The winner will be the master and the loser will be the slave. Now, to be clear, as Diana pointed out, we're not weak. Each of us is made in the image and likeness of God. Each of us has within us the image of God. The Latin term is imago Dei. And in this imago Dei, it gives each one of us, according to the book of Genesis, dominion over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air and every creeping thing that crawls upon the face of the earth. See, imago Dei, this image of God that gives us dominion over the people that we find in God's creation. But it also gives them dominion over us. God's image, the imago Dei, is absolute. No one person has any greater or any less than anybody else. The dominion I have over you is no greater than the dominion you have over me, nor any less. This is what Thomas Jefferson meant when he wrote, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and are endowed by their Creator certain inalienable rights." It is through God and His image within us that we have the power to love and care for each other. It is through God and His image within us that we have the power to fulfill our duty to keep this garden, this beautiful creation, to manage it so that it may grow and thrive and flourish. It's through God and His image within us that we can look our neighbor in the eye as equals, work hand in hand, side by side, to build God's kingdom on this earth. To go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, teaching obedience to all that Jesus commanded. It's through God and His image that we have all the power that we need. We are not weak. But what Jesus says is beatitude, utmost blessing, supreme bliss to the meek, the mild, the gentle, and the humble. To be meek is not to be powerless. What we are called to do is to be wise in our use of power. The truth of God is not might is right, but we are given might to be used for right. There's strength in being gentle. God desires for us to live lives of love. Not to insist on our own way, but to bend and yield wisely and judiciously, so that we may live lives of peace with one another, so that we can live as friends, side by side, arm in arm. God desires that we share each other's joys and burdens through all of life's up and down. True meekness, true gentleness, true humility comes from knowing that you have power, but you choose not to use it. True meekness doesn't come from using power to destroy or to divide, to achieve our own ends, but to use that power constructively to build the kingdom of God. It's Christ Himself who sets the example for us. Even though Christ had the power of God, He did not come as a conqueror. Instead, He rode into Jerusalem on a donkey. Though legions of angels stood by ready to minister Him, it was Jesus who washed the feet of His disciples. Though He commanded the armies of the heavenly host, He took the 39 lashes across His back, the crown of thorns on His head, the nails in His hands and feet, and died a mortal's death on a Roman cross. It is the mild and gentle, as Jesus set the example, that turns away evil. It reminds those who are lost in their lust of power of the gentle, of the goodness and the truth that's even within them. And I may sound a bit naive or unrealistic, but I remind you that the heart of this nation was changed by the gentleness, the kindness, and the meekness of Martin Luther King Jr. when it came to civil rights. It is the meek and the gentle who, by their smile and their laughter, calm the souls around them. We've all had someone in our lives whose quiet presence inspires us, calms us, brought us joy. We all know someone who put a smile on our face simply without saying a word. Utmost happiness. Utmost happiness to the meek, for they will inherit the earth. It is the meek who enjoy the beauty of creation. It's the gentle, the humble who have time to enjoy the simple beauty of a sunrise, color of flowers, the sound of the ocean, who can stand in awe of the awesome power of mountains and hear the laughter of children, live in fellowship of a meal with friends and family. It is the gentle of soul, the mild, that revel in the gifts that God has given to all his children. It is the meek whose dreams are not turned inward to glorify themselves, but outward in love of neighbor and in thankfulness to the one who made all things. It is the meek who surrender themselves to become true disciples, obedient to Jesus' commands, the law of love, who finds salvation in the Lord forever.